Welcome back to what has been a very different Sunday footy show. Thanks for your company as I'm joined by the journos, Andrew Webster from the Sydney Morning Herald, Brent Reid from the Australian and David Ricco from the Daily Telegraph. Gentlemen, I had a host of questions here about on-field matters, but after what we just heard from Scott Morrison in regards to the future, the near future of isolation in regards to non-essential, going outside unless it's really for food or for medicines. Chris Ullman, our Channel 9 reporter, has basically said AFL and NRL, that will close the season down. Your reaction to what you've heard and to some of the phone calls you've made?
Well, I spoke to Peter V'landys literally 15 minutes ago, Pete, and at the moment it's business as usual because there's not a ban on essential work travel, and you could argue that footballers flying into state's part of their job. The second thing is they're hiring charter flights. So at the moment, as it stands, they plan to go on. Now, the concern he has, and the concern I suppose everyone has, is that we go into complete lockdown. And when that happens, it's shut down regardless. But at the moment, what we saw from Scott Morrison doesn't really change things as far as the NRL is concerned.
There is an inevitability about this, though. Yeah. Certainly the NRL are prepared for the moment to come that they do lock down.
Yeah.
On the back of today's announcement, they're significant. And Reedy's 100% right as it currently stands. Yeah. But the next 24 hours are going to be huge for the NRL.
I think the NRL, like the AFL and racing, are following the same line as each other, and that is they're just going off the back of what federal and state governments and health authorities are telling them to do. Remember, the NRL also brought in a pandemic expert and a biosecurity expert, so they're listening to those consultants as well. But I'm with you. The rhetoric that I was getting behind the scenes on Friday was that there's an inevitability that this is going to be shut down sooner than later. And the NRL, because of its precarious financial state, are just trying to get in as much content as they can before we go underground.
I think they suspect the lockdown will be 14 to 21 days, and I think they've got a 4-week window where they can still play the full season and make games up through Origin and
buy rounds.
But you know what I find the issue is? The issue is how that's going to play with the public. While they're getting shut down in terms of their employment and work and whatever else, while footy continues on, why are footballers special? Why are they different to the rest of us? Now, I actually agree with the line that you go with what the experts tell you, but how that's going to play with the public and the fan base, the working class fan base of this game, is going to be very interesting. We saw how they reacted to Peter V'landys last Sunday, saying we deserve a payout from the federal government. I don't know how much longer they're going to cop, not working while footballers do.
From what I just heard, I'm of the belief that the two matches this afternoon will be the last two matches that we play for months.
There's a genuine potential of that for certain, given their significant announcements this morning. And as I said, the next 24 hours with the state governments deciding at Cabinet whether a complete lockdown is required, and that's going to impact the NRL. I think Webby's point's an interesting one in relation to whether the public will accept footballers playing. Well, footballers are a part of society. They are a part of the public. I wonder if they accept the decision to keep trucking forward as a game. Now, given the significance of the announcements that may come forward.
I do think people would be sitting back, yes, loving their rugby league, that they've got something to look forward to, but I would also think that they would be bemused by complaints about routines being thrown out when guys are jumping on private planes to go and play football games and then flying back home. I think
they'd be bemused by it, but I don't think they'll particularly rail against rugby. I think people enjoy watching the footy, right? I think at the moment it gives people something to do when they're locked at home. They can watch a footy game, and I think people almost hold on to that. But I certainly think there's people out there who are surprised by the footy still going on, and they're wondering why it's happening.
People need to get a little bit of perspective about what's going on, because people are going to start losing their jobs and they're going to start losing their lives in some cases.
How confident are you asking players to self-isolate?
Well, that's what I was about to say, Pete. I think this comes back to how stringent they are. If the NRL, given all the advice, etc., and we keep pushing forward, all this comes back to the players' ability to self-isolate, which I think is admirable, and I think it's required. But I feel it's going to be a huge challenge to stop 20-year-old, 22-year-old.
Instagram will be the giveaway.
We sent out an edict.
That'll
the
be the
game
give
did.
up.
The game sent an edict a week ago. Don't shake hands. Don't hug each other. Now, we all thought it was silly, right? Because they're attacking each other during the game. But at the end of the game, blokes are shaking hands and hugging each other when they've been told not to. So how can we expect them to self-isolate when they can't even follow a simple instruction like don't shake hands and hug each other?
The concern I have as well, and I mean this with all due respect, I love our players, but a lot of them live in a bubble. And a lot of them, I feel as though probably don't even fully comprehend or understand what is happening in the external.
Well, the wider community don't. Look at Bondi Beach.
Yeah.
It was packed the other day.
Yes.
I mean, people just haven't got a grasp of this yet.
It's going to be interesting because this is. I spoke to the NRL earlier today too, and so a lot of the self-isolation rules are going to before the RLPA at the moment, and the NRL are looking to possibly bring in, the ability to breach players if it's found that they haven't kept to these self-isolation rules. So, can you imagine the debate that's going to start and the arguments that are going to be had if all of a sudden a player gets breached because he's hasn't self-isolated as he should have under the protocols that the NRL are laying out this week?
A common question I've been asked is, what do our football codes here in Australia, and I guess maybe the horse racing industry, know that all the other sports around the world don't know? Why are we going ahead when every other sport around the world has closed shop?
I think a lot of those sports shut down because a player tested positive, and we haven't had that situation. Not all of them, mind you, but a lot of them. In the cases where they didn't have that happen, they sort of fell into line. We look at football in Europe. Obviously, some leagues shut down because players contracted the virus, and then other leagues sort of fell into step with that. We haven't had anyone contract the virus here that we know of, any rugby league players. And as Webby said, they're just following the medical advice that they're getting. They've got a biosecurity and pandemic expert. They've met with the health minister. And look, no one's told them shut it down. And the other issue is they need the money. The NBA in America and European football, they've got so much cash it's not funny. We don't.
Yeah.
If we had a player test positive, what would be the protocols that would be undertaken?
Well, they've already said it numerous times this week, the NRL. They won't shut down the comp. They'll shut down a team, and that's the whole reasoning why they went to the state government and said they wanted to get results back sooner than later so they could prevent a team from playing another team, and then they'd have to shut down. So they've got provisions in their draw right to be able to make up games throughout the year, midweek matches, it's the same contingency with the Warriors if they decided, well, that's it, we're going to go home. So it won't necessarily shut down the comp, but it'll shut down a couple of games.
But not only that, Webby, they'd have to also test the team that they played the week before as well. So it would certainly shut down
two
that
games,
team.
potentially two games you lose. Yeah.
All right, let me play devil's advocate and look at the worst possible scenario. If our game closed down for months, for 4 or 5 months, do we have a game at the end of that period of time?
Financially, they'd be on the game would be on its knees. They just don't have.
You wrote about it this morning.
Yeah.
The dollar cost.
Yeah.
That is difficult to ascertain, obviously.
On a phone hookup with all the CEOs, Todd Greenberg and Peter Volandis broke the news to all 16 CEOs that they've worked out that it's a $500 million loss should the competition stop, compared to a $110 million loss if games continue to be played behind closed doors. $110 million loss, the game is a fighting chance to survive. $500 million, they can't survive.
The game survives, though, Pete. Rugby
It'll
league will
survive for
survive.
sure.
It'll just come back in a different form.
But it's just market
almost.
Market supply and demand.
Yeah.
Players just won't get the money
No.
that they had. Coaches and players and clubs and football department expenditure just won't be what it used to be.
It's
So
almost
is
So it'll survive in some form. It's just going to look different.
It's almost
to what
like
it
we
is now.
start again, right? We'll have to start again. And, there's going to be some massive
some
changes
clubs
under
might
that.
go.
Yeah.
Is it the avenue then to get our players to actually follow the rules and self-isolate, to pitch the money angle?
It's pretty good incentive,
If you
isn't it?
mention pay cuts, is that...
Pete, that's the only way. That is the only way. You have to, because I think the players need to understand right here, right now, that there are clubs, staff members at clubs that have already started to take redundancies, already started to take annual leave, non-paid leave. And so when players are crying poor that there's no way we're taking a pay cut, they need to realise that staff that help them get onto the field are taking redundancies to keep this competition alive.
For mine, the real big one is Origin. Origin generates more money for the competition than almost anything. So if that is grounded or is compromised in a significant way, that's going to be a big hit to the game's bottom line. So we keep hearing that the game's got enough money to last for 3 months. Now, I've been told by other people in the NRL it's less than that, much less, about 6 weeks. So, yeah, it's going to be some pretty dark days ahead.
All right, we've got under a minute to go. Let's try and finish it on a positive. Have you liked what you've seen this weekend?
It's different.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
good to
it's
hear it. It's good to be able to hear what they're saying on the field.
There's been
And
some
the
good
footy's been pretty good.
The footy's been good. The 2 Friday night games were great games, I thought. It's been some good footy.
I think we're talking less about referees, Pete.
Yeah.
Also, as
I
a result
think
of just being absorbed by the contact and the listening to the players.
I think the officiating's been very good, and as I said earlier, maybe we're underestimating the external pressures of having a crowd there. So hopefully we can. All right, well, it's a very different inside the 10. We didn't get into too many other topics, but unfortunately, that's going to be the main one after what we just heard the Prime Minister relate to the nation. Webby,
Still on?
Reedy, Dave, I hope I see you here next week.
Can we FaceTime it next week?
And we'll have a more uplifting conversation.